Good evening from Muncie. Yesterday I was not able to do a discourse. Today it's late. I have to take a couple of days. I apologize for those who might have been following religiously. But in the meantime, let's go on to the next bracha, which is Selach Lanu Avinu Ki Chatanu. And here the Levush writes, ahead of the bracha, the sixth bracha, Selach Lanu, corresponds to that which Malachim said, Baruch Atah Hashem Chanun Arbel Yislach, when Yehuda said, Tzadka Mimeni, the Nislach and about Tamar, and his Aveir was forgiven. I don't know where the Levush gets that from, but somewhere I assume. And why the Sliach comes after Tshuva? Because through the Tshuva, HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgives. And it says, Yeshuva Hashem Yirachameyu, return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu because He is merciful. And to the Lord because He is constantly forgiving. The Machzor says that, I'm not sure which Machzor is quoting here. It says here Chav Beis, but I don't know Chav Beis. Kobo, of course. The Machzor Kobo says that this bracha starts with a Samech, Selach, and it ends with a Ches, Babeli Sloach, in Gematria of Chaim, 68. Because somebody who is forgiven his sins in the merit of their Torah is called alive. Somebody who is forgiven on their sins is forgiven in the merit of the Torah, which is called Chaim, which is called alive. This corresponds to the midah of Avraham Avinu, the master of Chesed and forgiveness. And this is what it means. So that's the case. What's going on in here is we're saying, just like Avram, who represents Chesed and forgiveness. I don't know this forgiveness part of Avram Avinu, but I guess the sense of reason that Baal Chesed as opposed to Baal Din is Moichel. And so we say that we're saying Yiratzon before our Hashem, our Father, that you should grant us forgiveness through the Chesed of Avraham Avinu, and do this on the unintentional sins, which are Chatanu, and do this on the intentional sins on Poshanu, and that is through the Pachad of Yitzchak, the midah of Gvura of Yitzchak, even though we rebelled in those sins. Because Mochel v'Selach Atah, you are Mochel and Selach, which is the midah of Yaakov, which has Mechila and Slicha together. So let's see if we can fit this into the words of the bracha. Selach Lanu Avinu Ki Chatanu. So the way I learned Selach is that Selach is cognate. I think it's the correct, even though fancy word for Lisalek, to remove. So, Selach Lanu Ki Chatanu, Chatoim, when it's not used as a generic word for sins, but rather in contradistinction to other types of sins, Selach Lanu Ki Chatanu means it's on the surface. It's not a severe sin. It was not intentional. You can just wipe it away, and you have a clean slate. But Mechal Lanu Malkeinu Ki Vashanu, I think Mechal is cognate to Mechok, which means you have to erase it. And to erase is more of an impression made. It can't just be removed like Kilachar Yad, just as you flick it away. But rather requires more of a erasure because it's embedded more into the paper. So therefore, it has to be Mechika, which is a higher and greater form of atonement. Now, he says that the Levush said that the Slicha is through Avraham Avinu, and the Mechila is through Yitzchak Avinu. So strange, right? But in Gemara and Shabbos, I think it's that Peites, it says that Yitzchak in Lasid Lava, when Avram, Kodesh Baruch Hu comes to Avraham Avinu and says, Banecha Chatu, and Avram says, Yimacha Kiddush Shmecha, they should be eradicated on Kiddush Hashem. Yeah, then comes to Yaakov and says, Banecha Chatu, Yimacha Kiddush Hashem, they should be eradicated. And then Kodesh Baruch Hu says, neither old men nor young kids Avram, the old man, Yaakov, the young kid, have appropriate understanding. We'll go to Yitzchak. And Yitzchak said, it goes to Yitzchak and says, Bonecha chatu, and Yitzchak says, okay, let's make a cheshbon. How much have they sinned? 8 hours a day, people sleep. X amount of hours, people eat. I think maybe X amount of hours, people are work, and people are davening. I forget exactly how many daily procedures he covers, but in the end he says, listen, I'll take half and you'll take half. In other words, I will bear the brunt of the Averos, half of the Averos they committed during the time which you possibly commit Averos, and you take half. And if you won't take half, so remember the Akedah, which I went up the Akedah to you and use my merit to remodel the whole thing. So eventually Yitzchak Avinu is the one who redeems Am Yisrael. Now, evidently, this is because to erase a chait, that's easy, so to speak. And that Avraham and Yaakov would be okay with, Kaviyachol. But to erase a pesha, something which is a rebellion, then Avraham says, how can we? And Yaakov says, how can we? But Yitzchak is the one who says, no, even a pesha can be atoned for. Why? And this, how does a pesha atone for? So it's kind of like the Sfarim say, mamtik mar b'mar. You fix something bitter with something bitter. Like when Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to make the water sweet, by Mora he threw in a bitter piece of wood, and the mar makes the mar matok. Two mars cancel each other out. Two bitter and become matok, becomes sweet. So here too, it's possible to say that there's a limit to how much chesed can work. And there's a limit to how much Yaakov, which is Tiferes, can work, because it's still combined with chesed. But din can confront din. The gvura of Am Yisrael in its Mesiras Nefesh for Torah and mitzvahs throughout the generations of Golus is an Akedah, is a direct continuation of Akedah, and is something which is a tremendous schus bedin. Deserve credit for it. So the Am Yisrael survived. So that Akedah, which we were okay ourselves, is in the schus of Yitzchak Avinu, in the genetic genetic bequest of Yitzchak Avinu to us. So therefore, there is a cheshbon to make. Yitzchak doesn't say, be moichelim. He says, I'll take responsibility for half, you take responsibility for half. Or I'll take responsibility for the whole thing. Why? Because there is a din in which we can balance the merit of Kiddush Shem Shemaim against the demerit of Chilul Hashem, and that way it can be Zoicha B'din. So it could be that that's how Yitzchak works, with specifically the one who is involved with Mechilas B'shoim. And then we say, Ki mochel v'solech Atah, right? So the way it works is that Zdonos nastu lo shigogos. If you do tshuva me yira, out of or fear. If you do tshuva out of ava, of course, Zdonos nastu lo zechuyos. But your demerits become merits. But on a minimal level of slicha, your demerits should no longer be demerits. So saying, go from mechila to slicha, and then be solech them. In other words, the averos, which are pshoim, which are rebellions, which require mechila, mechika, should be downgraded to chatoim, which requires slicha, salek, and that way they'll be able to become, our deliberate sins will become a shogeg sins, and that way the couple next time, I guess we come to Shmonesrei, say Selach Lanu, that'll take care of those averos. Obviously, it takes time in order to do that, but that is, I guess, the point. And we end the bracha Bruch Atah Hashem Chanun HaMarbeh Li Sloach. Chanun is obviously. I'm sorry. Ki mochel v'sleach Atah, he says Kneged Yaakov, because mochel is the according to his approach. Slech is Avram Avinu. Mechila is Yitzchak Avinu. So Lech and Mochel together, that corresponds to Yaakov, the Hanhaga which harmonizes the two different types of relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Baruch Atah Hashem Chanuna Marbel Yisrael. Chanun means the source of Chanina. Chanina is grace. It means Sachein v'Seichel Tov B'nei Elokim v'Adam. So there's a special relationship between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is why Hashem is Marbel Yisrael. If there isn't a great special relationship, then there can be slicha, but not a riboy slicha. You'll get, what you deserve, maybe a little bit more. But Chanuna Marbel Yisrael means because you have the special relation with us. The special slicha is going back to Yetzias Mitzrayim. So therefore, we have a special chen, a special grace, which transcends our merits. The Malbim says that chen is a love which is not contingent on any specific phenomenon. It's just a pure love in and of itself. So because the Kosh Baruch Hu said pure love to us, so therefore he's a Chanun HaMarbel Yisloach. He's the able to or wants to be Solech much more than perhaps we even deserve. Okay, so that's the bracha of Selach Lanu, and I have some email I wanted to share also, if I can find it quickly, from Remicha Berger. Let me just find it. Okay, on Dea Bina Vahaskel. So he says to check out the Gra on Mishlei, the Shitasa, Dvash, honey, is a mashal for Dea Bina Vahaskel. So I guess the Dea is Dalit, Beis is Bina, and Shin is Haskel, which is spelled with a sin. So therefore he says, Dvash Motzasa, Chol Deyecha Pen Tiz Be'enu V'Hakriya. So if you find honey, eat only sufficient, lest you become satiated and regurgitate it. This is Mishlei 25:16. To advising that one study Torah, but not try to reach beyond that what one is ready to understand, which is what we find in the lament of Ben Zoma's trip into paradise. Ben Zoma hates v'nifka. Ben Zoma went too far. And the Gemara says in Chagiga that upon him the pasuk says, Dvash Matzasa, we found that pasuk, we found honey, be moderate. He then Remicha writes that the Nusach the Rambam and Nusach Teiman is Chaneinu Meidcha Dea Chachma Ubina Vehaskel. So it's interesting, this idea. According to that, Dea evidently means the very notion of intellect and cogitation. And he writes here, I am less than content identifying Dea with Chachma rather than Das. As I see it, Chabad is insight, reasoning, knowledge, and in intimacy with the subject. Yichud, the unity of Hayodea Vayodea, unity of the knowledge and the person who knows it. Information is copying some of the other's form. This goes back to Chomen and Surah, to one's mind. And Das includes learning a derech of how to do something, as well as immersion in its art, which is why Das can be replaced by Keser to come before Chachma, insight, and that's explaining that it will take more time than we have available. Whereas Devash takes Das, knowledge of ideas, and through Bina finds application. But again, that's the end of that email. Again, what I would say is that the idea is that Dea, if the gear says Dea Chachma Bina V'Haskel, so then Dea of course does not mean Chachma, but it's the purpose where it means the capacity to have intellect, like a bar das, to begin with, and then that we use in order to accomplish Chachma Bina V'Haskel. And going back, here's another email which he sent me, which is I'll find momentarily, I hope. I don't know how to get to it right now. All right, So I don't want to go for over. If I find it, so Hashem, we'll include it tomorrow night. Have a good night from Muncie.